2 years down the drain. Hey, I'm new to this subreddit and wanted to share my story, as to maybe get some input on how to better move on. Just some quick backstory stuff first. So me 19 and my ex 19 had been dating for 2 years, 1 month and 1 week. We met when we were 17, and started dating after about 10 days of knowing each other. We have the same friend group and met during a group hangout. We live about an hour away from each other and have to take the ferry to get to each other's house. My ex has a best friend that she has known since she was 2. Let's call the best friend Thea 20. Almost 4 weeks ago now I broke up with my ex for having cheated on me with her best friend's cousin. Let's call him Chris 25. A month before the breakup, me and my ex had celebrated our 2-year anniversary. We bought a lot of stuff for each other, had balloons, heart paper chains, movies and sex. It was great, but that was also around when Chris and my ex started hanging out a lot together. My ex, Chris, Thea and another guy would go out and drink and party at the local bar, and I would usually be unavailable because of work. Not that I was always invited anyways. Sometimes I would come and say hi to her while at the bar and would just see him in the background. My ex and Chris was hanging out a lot more, talking a lot more, and she got involved in his friend group as well. I thought all of this was nice, but yeah, I got jealous. She started spending more time on him than me. She would sneak on her phone to snap him while we hung out, and then he took over her #1 spot on Snapchat. I talked to her about that, saying it was kind of a reassurance for me, because I had been her one on Snap ever since we met, but she just brushed it off like it was nothing at all. I also said that I was kind of jealous of how she would always hang out with him more than me. She said it was fine and that I was allowed to be jealous, and it went no further than that. About a week before the breakup, my ex was constantly tired, didn't want any sex, and would be very on talking to him. She would sneak to the bathroom to talk to him so that I wouldn't know. The night before I found out she was cheating, I came over to her place for a sleepover. We were having a great time, playing card games with her family, planning our future, planning the trip we were gonna go on the next week, cuddling up to each other and stuff like that. Then we woke up the next morning and everything was as usual. We cuddled in bed, ate breakfast together and talked with her parents. We were gonna work out together that day, so she drove me down to the ferry, and instead of parking her car there she took the car with her over to the other side of the ocean, something she never does. Then she drove the opposite way of the gym and said we were going on a surprise trip. We stopped and bought ice cream while we looked at what hotel we were gonna be staying at on vacation and started planning how to celebrate our birthday coming up, because we have our birthday on the same day. Then after that we got in the car again and parked the car outside of my house. In the car she just sits looking away from me for about a minute until she finally says we have to talk. I get real stressed and ask if I have done something. Then she just shakes her head, looking as if she is about to cry. I ask her if she has done something and she nods. Then I ask if she has been cheating on me and she nods, and then she starts sobbing. I have no idea what to do and so it just feels like I can't breathe. We're both gasping for air and sobbing our eyes out. I start asking why and how far things have gone. Very stupid, but I just have to know as to get peace of mind. She admits they've been having sex for about 2 weeks, he's been sending her nudes, she's been going down on him, and she's been lying about where she's been going and instead going to his house, staying the night sometimes, and sneaking over there whenever she's done with her night shift. I love this girl, and she has been my life for 2 years, and then I said we need a break. And if I'm ever going to consider taking her back she has to cut contact with this guy today. And she just asks if I'm serious, and then starts crying again. And yeah, she says she will call him when she gets home. And then I don't hear from her for 5 hours. I tell my mom and stepdad, and they're awfully more supporting than I thought they would be. I cry and they're there for me. So it was nice. They say they are done with her and that I should leave her in the past. And when my ex finally answers my calls she says she has been going for a long drive. Then I press her to admit she went over to say they're done. And then I press her to admit that she went right there and slept with him again. So yeah, I just immediately said that we're breaking up. Then I was on the phone for 10 minutes wanting to know why, but she keeps her composure sounding like she's unbothered. She says I've been so grumpy lately, which I have. Yes. Everything had been too much for me lately, and I hadn't been completely open with her about what had been happening to me in my life. Then I hang up and call some friends to ask for advice about what to do, especially friends on the web. Throughout the night my ex messages me tons and tons begging me to take her back and that she is sorry and underestimated what we had. I say I can't forgive her and that she has ruined me. We agree that she will come over the next day and pick up her stuff. The next day she comes over and picks up her stuff, and I get mine back. We spend about an hour doing it. She breaks down crying for about every item we put in her car. I bring her some water and tissues and she gives me a hug. She asked me 2 times if she can kiss me, and I say no. She takes with her all the letters I was currently writing, all the things she gave me, everything that connected us. She also got my promise ring, and I didn't want hers back. Then she leaves. 15 minutes later she calls me and tells me she also wants one more thing. So we meet along the way at the store and I give her the thing she wanted. Then we go shopping cause she wanted to join me. She tried to hold my hand, but I took it away. We got our items and she put her card on the scanner and paid for my things. So I did the same to make us even. Then when we leave her I call her and start singing "See You Again," the one from the Fast and Furious franchise. And she sobs singing along. I just wanted to leave it on a funny note I guess. For the next 4 days I call her again because I can't seem to let her go. Whenever I ask her why she cheated she gives me a different reason every time. Like that I was always grumpy, she has to be alone. We had fallen into a routine, and the reason I thought maybe was the real reason. That she could not get enough of the attention. Throughout the relationship, she had forced me to cut contact with my best friend because my ex was uncomfortable with our relationship. Meanwhile she was allowed to talk to every guy that flirted with her, because it would be weird if she cut contact she said. Even with Chris, I told her that I was kind of uncomfortable with their relationship at first, and she yelled me out about how she was allowed to have her own friends. I suppose she was very toxic, but I was also easily manipulated. When I was told that Chris was using drugs, I immediately called my ex to warn her after we had broken up. I said I had to warn her and she insisted she was alone at that time. She said she was allowed to choose her own friends, even though she had no tolerance for this kind of stuff throughout our relationship. And recently I found out through someone else that Chris was sitting there with my ex, and they were laughing about me after the conversation me and her had. During this whole breakup, Thea, my ex's best friend, was on vacation, and she would get home 4 days after we broke up. My ex told me that she was going to confess to Thea that she had been sleeping with her cousin, the day after she would come home from vacation. My ex told me how she just knew that her best friend would forgive her, and how she was going to invite her out for a bunch of stuff, and on a date with she and Chris. I thought this was absolutely horrible. Therefore, I called her best friend and confessed everything that had happened before my ex could. And then we talked for 3 hours straight. And she agreed that this was horrible of my ex and Chris. Thea thanked me a lot while we both were sobbing over the phone. I wanted to prepare her for the confession from my ex. I knew that Thea was a people pleaser, and put on the spot she would forgive my ex for just seeing her cry. And then me, Thea, and another friend of my ex with an outside perspective sat down and talked for 6 hours total over 2 days. We were prepping up Thea for what to ask my ex and how to deal with it without having to please my ex. The plan was for Thea to distance herself from both my ex and Chris, because she felt used by both of them. Then after that, me, Thea and the other friend Maya would drive around for a few hours talking about this. Then we were going to call my ex's mom and confess everything to her. The three of us could not handle staying in my ex's life anymore after all of this, and wanted to inform her mom about everything now that my ex would have no one anymore. We were going to warn her about this guy who used drugs, about how my ex was suicidal, harming herself, and had a lot of mental problems. That was what we wanted to at least. I will probably make a part 2 of this that's about the confession and everything that has happened since. Just want to see if my writing is clear or not in this part 1. I'm gonna be answering whatever questions there are.